The stars twinkled brightly in the vast expanse of space as the crew of the Starseeker prepared for their next great adventure. The galaxy had always been a place of mystery, and the unknown had always beckoned explorers to venture further into the dark reaches of the universe. But this mission was different. This mission was not about finding a new planet to inhabit or discovering new life forms. It was about something far more important, something that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. Captain Sarah Williams stood at the helm of the Starseeker, her eyes focused on the holographic map displayed before her. She had led many expeditions before, but this one was unlike anything she had encountered. The team had been briefed on the mission's objective: to find an ancient power hidden somewhere in the galaxy, a force so immense it could alter the course of history. Some said it was a weapon of unimaginable strength, while others whispered it was a secret to unlocking the true potential of the universe itself. No one knew for sure, but Captain Williams was determined to find out. "Prepare for launch," she said, her voice steady and calm. She turned to her crew, who were busy making final adjustments to the ship's controls. They were all eager to embark on this grand journey, but there was a sense of unease in the air. This mission was dangerous, and the stakes were higher than ever. The crew had trained for years, but nothing could have prepared them for what lay ahead. The Starseeker's engines roared to life, and the ship slowly ascended from its docking bay. As they passed through the atmosphere of their home planet, the crew gazed out at the stars beyond. Each one seemed like a distant dream, a world waiting to be discovered. But they weren't just searching for any planet. They were searching for something that could unlock unimaginable power. The coordinates they had received pointed to a remote corner of the galaxy, a place where no one had ventured before. It was said to be a planet that held the key to unlocking the greatest force the universe had ever known. As the ship soared through the vastness of space, the crew members began to gather in the ship's observation deck, eager to witness the journey ahead. Among them was Lieutenant Jack Adams, the ship's chief engineer, who was responsible for ensuring that the ship's systems remained intact throughout the mission. He was a man of few words, but his sharp mind and quiet confidence made him one of the most trusted members of the crew. "I've checked the coordinates again," Lieutenant Adams said, his voice low and cautious. "These readings are unlike anything we've seen before. We're not just heading to a regular planet. We're heading into uncharted territory." Captain Williams nodded, her expression serious. "I know, Lieutenant. This mission is unlike any other we've undertaken. We don't know what we'll find when we get there, but we have to be ready for anything." The ship cruised through the stars, the silence in the observation deck only broken by the hum of the engines. The crew was lost in their thoughts, each one contemplating the unknown that awaited them. They all had one thing in common: a burning desire to uncover the truth behind the mysterious power hidden in the galaxy. It was a power that could either save the galaxy or destroy it. As the ship neared its destination, a sense of anticipation filled the air. The crew gathered around the ship's command center, staring at the planet that appeared on their screens. It was a large world, covered in thick clouds, with swirling storms and an atmosphere that seemed both hostile and intriguing. No one had ever visited this planet before, and it seemed that no one had even attempted to explore it. The planet was in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, isolated from the rest of civilization, but it was exactly where the crew needed to be. The captain's voice broke through the tense silence. "We're getting close, prepare for landing." The crew members scrambled to their stations, securing everything for the descent. The ship's massive engines roared as they began their descent through the planet's atmosphere. The turbulence was intense, shaking the ship violently as they fought against the heavy winds and electrical storms that surrounded the planet. It felt as if the very atmosphere of the planet was alive, resisting their arrival. "We're going to need to make a controlled landing," Lieutenant Adams called out, his hands flying across the controls. "This planet's atmosphere is not like anything we've seen before. It's unstable." "Just keep us steady," Captain Williams replied, her voice calm despite the chaos. "We can handle it." The ship continued to shake as it descended further, but the crew remained focused on their task. The view outside the observation windows was obscured by the thick clouds, making it impossible to see what lay below. It was as if they were flying blind into the unknown. Suddenly, a flash of lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the planet's surface below. In that brief moment of clarity, something caught the captain's eye, a glimmer of light reflecting off the surface. It was a structure, something man-made, or at least not naturally formed. The captain's heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary planet. They weren't just about to land on a remote world. They were about to land on a planet with secrets. Secrets that could change everything. "Hold on," Captain Williams shouted as the ship plummeted toward the surface. The crew braced for impact, the ship's hull groaning under the pressure. The ground below them was coming up fast, but there was no turning back now. They had arrived. The ship's landing gear touched down with a loud thud, the shock reverberating through the crew's bodies. The ship was on the ground, but the journey was far from over. The crew was about to step foot on a planet that had been forgotten by time, a place that hid the greatest secret humanity would ever know. As the crew unstrapped themselves from their seats and prepared to exit the ship, there was a sense of awe and fear in the air. They had made it, but what they would find here would change everything. The crew stepped off the ship and onto the planet's surface, their boots sinking into the soft, uneven ground. Ahead of them stood the ruins of a once great civilization, long abandoned and forgotten. The ruins were ancient, weathered by time and the harsh conditions of the planet. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of the wind howling through the broken structures. Captain Williams led the crew forward, her heart pounding with excitement and uncertainty. They had come here to find power, but little did they know. What they would uncover would change the galaxy forever. The journey had just begun. The Starseeker sat still on the barren surface of the unknown planet. Its engines had fallen silent, leaving behind an eerie quiet that seemed to hang in the air. The thick swirling clouds above them seemed to press down on the crew as they prepared to explore the planet's secrets. They had landed in a desolate area with no signs of life around them, but the strange feeling in the air told them this planet was far from empty. Captain Sarah Williams stood at the front of the crew, her eyes scanning the horizon. The landscape was barren, dominated by rocky terrain and jagged mountains in the distance. The only signs of life were the faint flashes of lightning in the sky and the swirling storms that seemed to come and go without warning. The wind howled as it swept across the surface, kicking up dust and sand, creating an atmosphere of unease. "This place feels wrong," Lieutenant Jack Adams said, his voice low. He adjusted the strap of his gear, keeping his eyes on the horizon. "It's like the planet itself is alive." Captain Williams nodded. "I agree. Stay alert. We don't know what we're dealing with here." The crew gathered their gear and stepped off the ship, their boots crunching against the rocky ground. As they moved forward, they found themselves walking through what appeared to be the remains of an ancient city. Towering stone structures lined the path, their walls covered in strange, faded symbols. The air was thick with a sense of abandonment, and the crew felt a weight pressing down on them, as though the very atmosphere of the planet was holding its breath. The ruins were clearly old, perhaps thousands of years old, but they had a strange, unsettling beauty to them. The architecture was unlike anything the crew had ever seen, a mixture of jagged stone and sleek alien metal. The structures seemed to rise out of the earth, as though they had grown from the planet itself rather than being built. It was as if the planet's very surface was shaped by these ancient beings, and now all that remained were the remnants of their civilization. As they continued exploring, the crew discovered a vast chamber hidden beneath the ground. The entrance was concealed beneath layers of sand and rubble, but with some effort they were able to unearth it. The chamber was large, its walls lined with intricate carvings and glowing symbols that seemed to shift and change as they approached. The air inside was cool and damp, and the strange glow of the symbols cast eerie shadows across the room. "What is this place?" asked Dr. Emily Foster, the ship's scientist, as she stepped inside the chamber, her voice filled with awe. She ran her fingers across the glowing symbols, marveling at their complexity. "This is not like anything I've ever seen before. These symbols, this is technology, but ancient." "I don't think it's just technology," said Captain Williams, her voice tense. She moved deeper into the chamber, her eyes scanning the walls for any clue as to what they were looking for. "There's something more to this. These markings, they feel like they were left for a reason." As they ventured further into the chamber, the crew found what they were searching for, a massive crystalline structure at the center of the room. The crystal was unlike any they had seen before. It seemed to hum with energy, its surface pulsing, with a soft rhythmic glow. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "What is it?" Lieutenant Adams asked, his eyes fixed on the crystal. "Is it a power source?" Dr. Foster stepped forward, cautiously reaching out to touch the crystal. As her fingers brushed against its surface, a surge of energy pulsed through the room, sending a shockwave through the chamber. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the crew felt as though the planet itself was alive, responding to their presence. Suddenly, a holographic image flickered to life in the center of the crystal. The crew gasped as they watched in stunned silence. The image was of an ancient being, tall with skin that seemed to shimmer like liquid silver. Its eyes were dark and filled with a haunting intelligence. The being spoke in a language the crew couldn't understand, but its words were accompanied by a translation projected on a screen beside them. "The secret of humanity lies within you," the being said, its voice deep and resonant. "You are the key. Your kind has been chosen to hold the power that will shape the future of the galaxy." The crew exchanged confused glances. What did this mean? How could humanity, with all its flaws, be the key to something so powerful? "The power you seek," the being continued, "is not an object. It is a force that exists within the very essence of your species. Humanity has been gifted with the ability to alter the course of time and space itself. But this power is dangerous. It must be controlled." The hologram flickered and faded, leaving the crew in stunned silence. The room was thick with tension as the weight of what they had just witnessed began to sink in. "This is it," Captain Williams said, her voice filled with disbelief. "This is the secret we've been searching for. The power isn't something we can hold in our hands. It's something within us." "But why?" Lieutenant Adams asked. "Why would humanity have such power? And why was it hidden here, on this planet?" "I don't know," Captain Williams replied, her voice grim, "but we need to find out." As the crew stood in the chamber, the storm outside grew louder, the winds howling like a warning. It was as though the planet itself was reacting to the revelation. The crew felt a cold shiver run down their spines, realizing that they had uncovered something far more significant than they had ever imagined. Suddenly, a loud crashing noise echoed from above, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The crew looked up in horror as the ceiling began to crack, dust and debris falling from above. Something was coming, something that didn't want them to uncover the truth. The crew hurried to escape the collapsing chamber, but as they ran, they realized something terrifying. They were not alone on this planet. The shadows seemed to shift and move, and strange glowing eyes began to appear in the darkness. They had uncovered the planet's dark secret, but now they had to survive it. The real danger was just beginning. The crew of the Starseeker had barely escaped the collapsing chamber when they found themselves outside, standing on the planet's barren surface, the storm still raging around them. The ancient ruins had shaken with a violent force. The very ground beneath their feet trembled. But what shook them most was the revelation, the secret they had uncovered. The hologram left them with more questions than answers, and the weight of the message they had just received began to weigh heavily on them. "What do you think it means?" Dr. Emily Foster asked, her voice shaky but filled with awe. She stood with her arms wrapped around herself, still reeling from the image of the ancient being and the revelation about humanity's power. Humanity, the key to everything? How is that even possible? Captain Sarah Williams stood silently, staring out into the storm, her mind racing. She was a woman of action, a leader who prided herself on her ability to think clearly under pressure, but this was something else, something she hadn't been prepared for. "We have to figure this out. Williams said, finally turning to face her crew. Whatever it is, it's bigger than us, bigger than the galaxy. If humanity really has this power, we need to understand it before anyone else does. Lieutenant Jack Adams, who had been silent for most of the journey, spoke up. You heard the hologram. It's dangerous. If humanity really is the key to this power, who else could be after it? Williams frowned. That's what worries me. We're not the only ones who know about this planet now. Whatever this power is, there will be others who want it. We have to move fast. The crew moved quickly back to the ship, making sure all equipment was secured. The storm outside had intensified, and the sky was now a swirling mass of lightning and dark clouds. The planet seemed to be alive, responding to their discovery. As they entered the ship, they locked down all the systems and prepared for the next step, finding out exactly what the secret of humanity was. The ship's internal systems hummed to life as they began to analyze the data they had gathered. Dr. Foster worked furiously at the control panel, pulling up the ancient symbols and holographic messages they had decoded from the ruins. As she examined the data, she discovered a hidden message embedded within the hologram. It wasn't immediately visible, but after running a deeper scan, she found it. A series of coordinates leading to a location deep within the heart of the galaxy. This is it, Dr. Foster said, her voice trembling with excitement. The coordinates lead to a place known as the core of humanity. This isn't just a myth. This is where humanity's power is hidden. What's the core of humanity? Asked Lieutenant Adams, stepping closer to the screen. Doctor. Foster paused for a moment, her finger tracing the glowing map on the screen. I don't know, but it's somewhere in the galaxy that has been deliberately erased from history. It's a place that's been hidden for a reason, probably to keep humanity from ever discovering its true potential. Then why is it on this planet? Captain Williams asked. Why here? I think this is the first piece of the puzzle, Dr. Foster said, her eyes wide. This planet, these ruins, they were built to guard the secret. The power we're looking for was hidden here in plain sight. But only humans could find it. There was a moment of stunned silence as the crew processed what they had just learned. The thought that humanity had been entrusted with such immense power was both exhilarating and terrifying. Could they handle it? Could anyone? Captain Williams snapped out of her thoughts. We need to find the core of humanity. Whatever it is, we need to get there before anyone else does. As the ship began to power up and move toward the coordinates, the crew prepared for the journey ahead. The stars outside their window seemed to stretch into infinity, and with each passing moment, the ship sped closer to the truth. But they had no idea what awaited them at the heart of the galaxy, whether it would be a gift, a weapon, or something more horrifying than they could imagine. Hours later, the Star Seeker arrived at the coordinates, and they found themselves orbiting a strange dark star system. It was a place that seemed to defy all known laws of physics, an anomaly that appeared to have been erased from the galaxy's star maps. The black void around it was filled with eerie light, and the planets in the system seemed to move erratically, almost as if they were alive. This is it, Captain Williams said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty in the air. We've arrived at the core of humanity. As they descended into the heart of the system, the crew could feel the ship vibrating. The closer they got to the center of the system, the more unstable the environment became. The ship's sensors began to flicker, and strange signals started to overwhelm the system. It's like the planet's trying to keep us out, Lieutenant Adams said, adjusting the controls. I'm losing control of the ship's systems. We need to pull back. No, Captain Williams said firmly. We're too close. We have to push through. Whatever this is, we're going to find out. With a final surge of effort, the ship broke through the strange barrier and descended into the center of the system. There, in the midst of the dark void, they found an enormous structure, an ancient, massive object unlike anything they had seen before. It hovered in space, its surface glowing with an eerie, pulsing light. It was the heart of humanity's power, the source of everything the crew had been searching for. The ship slowly docked at the structure, and the crew prepared to step out, their hearts racing. They were about to face the truth, the revelation that humanity was far more powerful than anyone had ever realized. What would they find inside? Was it a blessing, or would it be their doom? The door to the structure slowly opened with a soft hiss, revealing the truth that would change the galaxy forever. The Starseeker hovered in space, suspended before the ancient structure that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. It was an enormous, irregularly shaped object, floating silently in the void. The crew stared at it in awe, unsure of what awaited them inside. Their journey had led them to this pivotal moment, a crossroads where the fate of not only humanity but the entire galaxy hung in the balance. Captain Sarah Williams stood at the helm, her mind racing. The structure ahead of them, which had been hidden from history, was undeniably linked to the power they had been searching for. But the question loomed heavy. Should they claim this power or protect the galaxy from its potential destruction? It was a decision that could change everything. "We've come this far," Lieutenant Jack Adams said, his voice low, his fingers hovering over the ship's control panel. "But we still don't know what's inside. Whatever it is, it's been hidden for a reason." Dr. Emily Foster, the ship's scientist, had been running simulations and analyzing the data they had gathered from the ancient ruins and the strange structure. "Everything points to this being the source of humanity's power," she said, looking up from her screen. "It's not just a weapon, it's a force, an energy that connects everything, everywhere. If we unleash it, we could reshape the galaxy. But at what cost?" Captain Williams took a deep breath and turned to her crew. "We've seen what this power can do. The message we uncovered, the hologram. It said that humanity is the key. But we need to remember why it was hidden. The power to change the future is dangerous. If used incorrectly, it could tear apart everything we know." The crew was silent, each of them struggling with the gravity of the decision. They had come so far, but now that they were standing at the threshold of the unknown, they realized how much was at stake. They were not only fighting for the galaxy's future, but for their own survival, and the survival of humanity itself. "We can't let this fall into the wrong hands," Captain Williams said, her voice firm. "We've uncovered humanity's true potential, but it doesn't mean we should exploit it. We must keep this secret no matter the cost." But just as they were preparing to make their decision, the worst possible scenario unfolded. The comm system on the Starseeker suddenly crackled to life, and the face of a familiar figure appeared on the screen. "Captain Williams," the voice came through, cold and commanding. It was Admiral Kale, a ruthless leader from a rival faction that had been tracking the crew's every move. "You've found it, haven't you? The power humanity was meant to wield. I suggest you surrender it to us before things get difficult." Captain Williams gripped the armrest of her chair, her mind racing. They were not alone. The enemy had arrived, and they were intent on taking the power for themselves. Admiral Kyle's forces materialized in the distance, a fleet of heavily armed ships that surrounded the Starseeker. They had been following the crew's every move, knowing that they would be the ones to unlock the secret humanity had hidden away for so long. And now, with the power within their reach, the enemy was ready to strike. "Prepare for battle," Captain Williams ordered, her voice unwavering. She turned to her crew. "We're not going down without a fight. Protect the secret with everything you've got." The crew scrambled to their stations, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. The Starseeker's weapons powered up, and the shields flickered to life. The tension in the air was thick, the weight of the situation pressing down on every member of the crew. They had come here to unlock the secret of humanity, but now they were about to defend it with their lives. As the enemy fleet closed in, Lieutenant Adams expertly piloted the ship, dodging incoming fire and returning fire with precision. The battle was fierce, each shot causing the ship to tremble as they engaged in a deadly dance of laser fire and evasive maneuvers. The stakes had never been higher, but as the battle raged on, Captain Williams knew that the true fight was not in space. It was the fight for control of the power that lay within the ancient structure. If Admiral Kale and his forces succeeded in taking the power, they would unleash chaos on the galaxy. The entire universe could be plunged into darkness. With a final burst of energy, Captain Williams made a bold decision. "Take us in," she commanded. "We're going to the structure. It's time to end this." The Starseeker rocketed toward the ancient structure, weaving through the enemy's fire. As they neared the structure's entrance, the energy field protecting it flared to life, pushing back against the ship. But with one final effort, the crew breached the barrier, and the ship entered the heart of the structure. Inside, the crew found themselves standing in a vast, empty chamber. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which rested the source of the galaxy's most coveted power. The glowing crystal pulsed with energy, its light filling the room with an overwhelming force. Captain Williams stepped forward, her eyes locked on the crystal. She knew what had to be done. They couldn't let anyone use this power, not even themselves. The universe was not ready for it. "Destroy it," she said firmly. "We cannot allow this power to fall into the wrong hands." The crew worked quickly, setting the charges around the crystal. The energy in the room seemed to grow stronger, with each passing moment as if the crystal itself was fighting to stay intact. "We have to move fast," Lieutenant Adams urged. "The enemy's not far behind." As the crew finished their preparations, the charges were set, and the countdown began. The room was filled with a deep hum, the energy in the crystal reaching its peak. They had made their decision. They would protect the galaxy, not by using the power, but by destroying it. The explosion that followed was deafening. The crystal shattered, sending shockwaves through the structure. The Starseeker shook violently, but the crew held on, knowing that they had made the right choice. As the dust settled, they watched as the ancient structure collapsed around them. The power was gone. The secret of humanity would remain just that, a secret. With a final somber look at the ruins, Captain Williams gave the order. "Let's go home." The crew returned to the Starseeker, knowing that they had just made the hardest decision of their lives. The galaxy would remain safe, for now. And humanity's secret would remain hidden, a reminder that some powers were meant to be left untouched. The Starseeker ascended into the stars, leaving behind a shattered planet and the knowledge that the true strength of humanity lay not in its power, but in its ability to make wise choices in the face of unimaginable temptation.